Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside the Issues. This is sponsored by the League of Women Voters Richfeild. My name is Maureen Scalia and I am your moderator for tonight's show. I am very pleased to have with me two very busy people, I'm sure. On my immediate left is Donna Drummond. She's the Director of Planning for the City of St. Paul. On my far left is Drew Kerr, and he's a PR specialist for Metro Transit, and Drew will find out exactly what that means in a few minutes. Usually in the beginning of my shows, I always ask people to tell the audience a little bit about themselves and how they got to be where they're at in terms of their job. Donna, if you would share that with us.
Sure, thanks Maureen. I've actually worked for the City of St. Paul my whole career as a city planner. I started 32 years ago and as a city planner one, and have kind of worked my way up the ranks and have always gotten to work on a variety of very interesting projects. So that was a big part of the reason that I stayed, and they were also accommodating and let me work part-time when my kids were growing up. And that was another big benefit and reason that I stayed so long. And yeah, it's been a great career. I've really enjoyed it.
So are you at liberty to tell us some of those projects? Or we'll talk about the subject of the show, which is the Green Line,
Sure.
The new light rail through St. Paul. But can you talk about some of the others before we get to that one?
Sure. I've worked on a lot of neighborhood planning issues and projects over the years. A lot related to sort of campus neighborhood development issues. St. Paul has a wealth of universities and colleges, and they're mostly located in residential areas. So there's inevitable friction in how those institutions are growing and changing. There's students living in the neighborhoods, and how do you make sure that the neighborhood is healthy and is a good place for both the institution and the neighbors who live in that area. University of St. Thomas is the biggest, and so a lot of issues related to that I've worked on over the years, and worked on different development projects, mostly along the western part of the city. Worked on developing a program for the city using the half-cent sales tax that the city collects, and worked on developing what's called the Neighborhood and Cultural STAR programs. STAR stands for Sales Tax Revitalization, and they're grant and loan programs for city capital improvement projects, and cultural can be used for some programming, but that's been a really great program for the city that both neighborhood groups and nonprofit organizations and for-profit businesses can apply to for projects.
And some help. Yeah, I remember when I was a student at St. Catherine's, that's way back in the late 60s. There was always a problem with the neighborhood and parking at St. Thomas, and I don't think that's ever gone away. Maybe it's an issue.
Yes, it's amazing how much city development relates to issues around parking. So.
Yes. And for people that are interested in that kind of thing, I know I served on the Planning Commission in Richfeild and found it extremely satisfying and interesting to do. Drew, PR specialist, how did you get to do that? How did you get to that point? And then tell us what that means, really.
Sure. So, well, Donna's been 30 years in St. Paul. I've got just over a year at Metro Transit, and so this is still sort of a position that's new to me, but I came to it after having been a reporter here in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area and writing a little bit about transit, so getting to learn very quickly how much was going on, and there really is a lot going on. My focus as a reporter was primarily on transit-oriented development. Not just the transit ways themselves, but all the activity that comes along with those, which we can talk about, but in the case of the Green Line, we've seen quite a bit of that. So in June last year, I started at Metro Transit, took my journalism skills and put them to a new position, this public relations position, and in a lot of ways it's very similar to being a journalist. You still have to ask a lot of questions, you still have to be providing information that's clear and accurate, and doing your part to make sure our story is told and it's told correctly. So that's what I'm doing now primarily, is just making sure that Metro Transit's
So are you talking to the media too then, when, as well as providing info and working with the website people and all of that?
It's communicating with the media, it's communicating with customers, it's communicating internally with our own employees. There's a lot of different audiences.
Yeah. And just for a review, we need to state that Metro Transit operates, go ahead.
Sure. So Metro Transit, first of all, it's a service of the Metropolitan Council, and the Metropolitan Council, the regional governing body, which does transportation services, but also things like wastewater management and regional housing plans, some of these bigger picture items for the 7-county metro region. So within that, Metro Transit's an operating division of the Metropolitan Council. We get funding from the Metropolitan Council to operate light rail service, the Green Line, which we'll talk about, the Blue Line, which opened 10 years ago now, the North Star, which opened now 5 years ago, as well as all of the local connecting bus services that knit these systems together.
It's really a big thing.
There's a lot of buses and trains out there. There are.
Somewhere, I think I read 81.4 million rides a year or something?
That was last year's ride total, and that's a number that has been at or above 80 million for the last several years, and really been on an incline really since the 70s, when we had your gas crisis, and then you went through a period where ridership kind of flatlined or declined, and ever since has done nothing but increase, and we hope that that's a trend that'll continue. We think it will.
Yeah. I'm going to throw a question out. A lot of people say, oh, I don't ever use the bus, why should I pay for it? What do you respond, how do you respond to that?
Well, sure. If you're a commuter from Richfield and you're coming to downtown Minneapolis on 35W, you probably see a few buses along the way, and you can think of every one of those buses as being up to 40 cars. If they ever in that bus, if it's a 40-foot bus, they can hold at least 40 people. Think of 40 cars, and that's fewer people that you have to get around as you go to work that day. So I think there's a benefit whether you're riding the bus or you're riding in your car next to the bus.
I agree. Donna, is the city of St. Paul, they really appreciate all the options for transit, right?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we're very interested in more multimodal transportation, so improving transit and improving biking and walking options as well as driving.
Yeah, it's really becoming, and we're becoming known for our biking thing. And I've seen on the bus, you can put bikes on the bus and hop on a bus. I guess your bike goes in the front or the back, I'm not sure, but they can ride the bus too, right?
Right. So that word multimodal that Donna used is a word that we use as well. So it's a network, and it's not just about only taking bus or only taking light rail or only biking or only walking or only driving, but all of these things, and maybe a few other things now along the way, whether that's car sharing or other services that are now coming up to give people even more options. So the bus and the train is part of that, but we know it doesn't serve everybody's needs all the time. So it's a part of a system.
And I noticed there's another park and ride opening somewhere. I can't remember exactly where it is, but it seems like you guys are opening park and ride 1 or 2 a year.
This morning we opened a park and ride at Brooklyn Park, Highway 610 and Noble Parkway, 1,000 spaces, doubled the capacity of the existing facility, which had been really at capacity now for 10 years. So that's really reflective of the growth we've seen in the park and ride system. The system itself, there's 30,000 spaces roughly in the Twin Cities metro area. We're using 18 to 19,000 of those last year. Those are spaces that are being filled every day, and the capacity that's not being used is really there for the future to accommodate growth. The system has grown, the use has grown. Last year's use was the highest that we've ever seen. And so, yeah, the growth that you're seeing here is just really matching the demand.
And for high-density areas, which that applies to quite a bit of St. Paul probably. I mean, if not apartments, the houses are close together and everybody has at least 2 cars, the streets get full. So you really encourage people to drive too. I mean, not to drive, to ride.
Right. We've come to realize, I think, too, that looking at transportation and housing costs together make a lot of sense, and to have more options for transportation and maybe not having to have a car to get around, or maybe one car instead of two cars, you can really make your income go farther, because maintaining and owning a car, it's been estimated the average cost is $7,000 per year. Well, if you can get by with one car or no cars, and you have a number of options to get around, that's really helping, especially lower income people, make their income go farther.
Yeah, yeah, and and also, I mean, sometimes, the concentration of low incomes tends to be in the core areas, although that's changing too. But some of the jobs are out in the suburbs, so these people do need transportation that's not the
Definitely.
automobile.
Right, right.
And the price of gas keeps going up too, so that's another option. And I remember I took the bus to work for a while at the UN. I loved it. I could read books and relax on the way to work. So when you got there, you were totally relaxed. I mean, not stressed out from Dodge cars or something like that on 35W.
Well, I think we're even hearing that, especially among the millennial generation, younger people, there's less interest in driving and more in transit, because they can be doing those things like on their smartphones or reading or doing
iPads,
other things.
yeah.
Right, and so I
All
think
the
that's
toys.
the big part of the increase in ridership, I think, is coming from that generation.
Yeah, I mean, if you do happen to get on light rail or transit, you see all the people with the plugs in their ears. Okay, well, we want to take some time to talk about the Green Line. That's the new light rail central corridor. From every count at this point, a big success. Is that correct? Just for right now?
You can take that one to begin with.
Actually, the preliminary stuff actually started in 2001. These things don't happen overnight. And that's when the first environmental thing went out in 2003, 4, 5, 6. They were talking to neighborhoods, talking to cities. What did that mean to the city of St. Paul? Most of the Green Line is in St. Paul. What did that mean for the staff at City Hall?
Sure. Well, in 2006 is when Mayor Chris Coleman was first elected, and he decided that taking advantage of the Green Line or the Central Corridor and making it more than just transportation improvement, but really as a city building opportunity, that was one of his primary initiatives, I think, when he first began as mayor. And so we really focused on how do we use this as a great opportunity to build the community along this line and make it a place where people could invest and live and work and just create more of a vibrant community as a result of this great transit investment. So we did a lot of work with the community in the 2006, 7, and 8 to create what's called the Central Corridor Development Strategy, which was a long-term vision for the whole corridor in St. Paul. The 7 of the 11 miles is in St. Paul. And then we followed that with station area planning, so looking at the areas within a quarter mile of each of the stations in St. Paul and saying, well, how do we want pedestrian and bike connections to work to get to the station? How do we want new development to happen around the stations? Where do we want new park spaces? Because higher density development really only works if you have things like green spaces to help focus new development around. And so we did that process with the community, and then we followed that up with a zoning study and changed the zoning of a lot of the properties along the corridor to encourage, to match what the vision was in the plans, and encourage more high-density development, more walkable, pedestrian-oriented, mixed-use development. So development's really been picking up, especially since the recession has finally ended, and developers are out there knocking on the door and kicking the tires, so to speak, and so that's been very exciting.
So just on the nuts and bolts, obviously you guys had to work with Met Council and all their commissions and stuff that were involved with pre-design, design, construction. All of that was a big thing. Were you reporting on any of this at the time?
No, I wasn't even in Minnesota at this time.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
you missed the whole shebang.
I like coming in when things are all done.
When all things are all done. Okay, we'll keep talking a little bit about the preliminary stuff. So the planners and stuff are working with the council primarily, and then the various neighborhood groups. I assume there were neighborhood meetings and that along each segment, so to speak?
Sure, we did that, and then we did work very closely with the Met Council's project office, the Central Corridor Project Office. They were in charge. That's where all the engineers were, and they were designing the system. So we worked very closely with them on pedestrian access. For example, initially each of the stations, the line, for those of you who haven't ridden it, it mostly runs down the middle of University Avenue for the majority of the length. And so the stations are in the middle of the street. So access is typically from the intersection where people would, cross on the red light, cross to the middle, get to the station platform. We talked about how it'd be great to have access from both ends of the platform. How would that work? How do people actually cross University at a non-signalized intersection safely? Because we didn't want University Avenue and the light rail to be a barrier. We wanted people to still be able to cross the street at every block. And so that was a big aspect of it. And another big aspect was focusing on the streetscape improvements along the corridor. The budget really wasn't there to do anything other than replace the sidewalks initially. And I think the city staff, the elected officials, the community realized that to really make this a great, really add to the community, make it walkable, attract new development, we had to invest in an upgraded streetscape. So we worked closely with the project office on the design of that and adding 1,000 trees to University.
1,000 trees?
1,000 trees, planted medians instead of just concrete medians. We have flowering shrubs and perennials in the medians, and we have decorative lighting, we have decorative paver bands, so it looks much more attractive, I think, for people to walk than it would have looked otherwise. So we worked very closely with the Met Council Project Office and the designers on that because the city did pay in an additional $13.5 million to make sure that those improvements happened. But we worked to make sure that it happened during construction, so we weren't like ripping up the street 2 times and then minimizing the impact on the businesses. So yeah, it worked out really well.
Yeah, at some place, I think on your website, it says from facade to facade or something like that, whatever they called. Anyway, all new gutters and the whole kit and caboodle.
Right, everything was replaced basically within the right-of-way, which is 120 feet from sort of building face to building face, and so that's the public right-of-way. That's where the sidewalks are, and the road and the LRT alignment, and that's why we didn't. The project didn't need to acquire very much property because it fit within the existing right-of-way. Because streetcars used to run up and down University Avenue, so there was room.
There was room for it.
Mm-hmm.
Now the business, let's talk about that. Obviously the construction meant that it was very difficult to get to some of them, maybe most of them. How did the city and the Met Council try to mitigate that?
Well, there was, I know the Met Council, they have outreach people who were assigned to different segments of the corridor and were the primary contact for the business people when issues arose, when they needed information or to get information out. They worked really hard to make sure that access to the businesses was disrupted the least amount of time and that there was clear signage and things like that. I mean, there were always issues going along that had to be resolved, but there was a lot of attention to that. Plus, the city worked with the Met Council and other partners to create something called the Ready for Rail program.
Okay.
So that offered up to $20,000 as a forgivable loan, so it could become a grant over time if the business stayed in operation on the corridor. And that helped kind of backfill the loss of revenue for these businesses who had a decrease in customers coming. And so there was a lot of interest, and this was primarily for the small businesses along the corridor. There was an interest in making sure that this project construction didn't force a lot of the small and many ethnic businesses out of business. And it's been very successful. There were 270 loans, I believe, almost $4 million, and there was a actual net increase in new businesses along the corridor. Very few
People
closed, and so there were, I think, about 100 that closed or moved off, and 100 new ones that opened along the corridor approximately. So that was very successful.
Well, for the audience, it's almost worth going online to the Met Council website and cue in the Green Line project, because it's really fascinating. Let's see. They got the full funding agreement in December of 2011, and also in December of 2011, the project was already 45% completed. It started downtown St. Paul, apparently, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yes,
so that was done first.
Right.
And remind me, we got to talk about Union Station, too. And then May 2012, construction is halfway done and on schedule. That was amazing to me always. September 2012, the Green Line tracks connected to the Blue Line, which is where it comes into Minneapolis, and the two run together. October of 2012, the first Green Line car was delivered. December, it's 84% done. And then during 2013, which is probably about the time you come on board, is when they install the majority of communication and electrical system, and the train testing begins. Must have been a heck of a lot of communications systems. I mean, everybody's got, I shouldn't say everybody, but every entity, every little piece of equipment has to talk to others, and that must have been something. Was that kind of hairy?
Sure, well, it's a fully integrated system, and it is very technologically heavy, and if you don't see it on the surface, it's because a lot of it is unseen. So there were several months of testing that took place after all of that was put in, and it's a matter of making sure that everything's working the way you think it's supposed to be working. And so even if we did really look like we were ready to go for quite a while there, you saw trains coming up and down University Avenue, and it looked like you should be able to get on one. There's a lot of stuff going on still behind the scenes that had to happen before we got to opening day, June 14th.
And I imagine there had to have been a lot of employees, too. I mean, you had to have new employees. They all had to be trained, new repair people. All of that had to happen.
Sure. So the short-term impact is thousands of construction jobs from the very beginning of construction through June 14th and the testing. But we also had, obviously, a project office of engineers and folks who are working on the line, which have now many of which have now transitioned to other projects, because we're going to try to do what we did in St. Paul and Minneapolis again, and then do it again, with extensions of the Green Line and extensions of the Blue Line. And so these are people that are going to continue to work in the same way that they have previously. But now, yes, we do have almost 200 rail operators that are now permanently stationed at 200 employees, including rail operators, who are permanently stationed in Lowertown, St. Paul, at what's called our operations and maintenance facility, where
that's
trains
brand
are,
new, too.
Yep.
Are you maintaining or doing work there on the Blue Line cars also?
Blue Line has its own separate facility. Each of our rail lines will have a facility of its own, so that train cars can be stored, maintained, repaired, cleaned, all these things that you need to do to make sure that the line is operating safely.
And before we go any further, let's talk about what the extension of the Green Line's going to include. Where's it going, that extension?
Sure. So it's called the Green Line Extension because it really will just be a continuation of the tracks from downtown Minneapolis and Target Field Station, where we've seen now the Blue Line and Green Lines come together, and we'll see additional light rail lines come together in the future, including the Green Line Extension, which is going to go through downtown, through Minneapolis, through the cities of St. Louis Park, Hopkins, Minnetonka, and ultimately then continuing to Eden Prairie. about 15.6 miles, 16 miles of new track there. And so that's on pace to get through the engineering, construction, design, all of those things that have to happen before we can get to opening day here in the next several years.
Okay, and then the blue line goes north.
So in the same way that the Green Line extension sort of on a map looks like a continuation of the Green Line going west, the Blue Line extension is a continuation of the Metro Blue Line, the line that some people would also know as the Hiawatha Line from downtown Minneapolis to the airport and to the Mall of America. That is going to continue from also Target Field Station through the cities of Golden Valley, Crystal, Robbinsdale, and ultimately to Brooklyn Park.
So I suppose your counterparts in all those cities are all gearing up for all the things that you did too.
That's right, yes.
Never ends for planners.
Right. Yeah, I've actually been over and talked to different gatherings of planners working on Bottineau and Southwest Corridor in the past few years.
And tell them your experience and what they can learn from them.
Right, a few tips and right.
Yeah. So, okay, so the testing was done in 2013 and then part of 2014. And the big day came when?
The opening weekend was Saturday, June 14th and Sunday, June 15th. So our first train was on that Saturday morning.
Okay, and I think it was something like 107,000 people actually those 2 days, opening weekend, were on it. That's an incredible number of people.
That's right. Well, it was quite a celebration, and if you remember, that Saturday was a little damp and a little soggy, and despite all that, we had activity at all the stations. The community members all got together and found ways of celebrating this unique new investment in their communities at each of the station areas or at several of the station areas. And throughout the weekend, on that Saturday and Sunday, 107,000 free rides were provided.
Wow. And that probably was a good test of how it was going to work.
We were prepared. We had really geared up for that day. I think everybody who worked at Metro Transit worked all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and really haven't slowed down since. So we got to go home on Monday and take naps, but that was a big weekend.
And so the ridership, let's see, I saw something like 28,000 almost that's riding it these days. Is that even up now?
So we track it by average weekday ridership is the best metric to use. So these are people that are going to work and going to school and going to Twins games or more recently to Vikings games. And we've got in excess of 30,000 average weekday boardings. So that's about 12.5 or 13% above what we thought we would have next year. And so we're very pleased with that number. And keep in mind that that hasn't even included now the University of Minnesota, which will begin school next week. So as the students start to come back, we think we'll see even more ridership.
That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of people. So if I'm a brand new person to light rail, and I get to a station, well, first I got to figure out how I'm going to pay for this. So take me through it. Walk me through how I get on a train.
Sure. So unlike a bus where you pay exactly when you board and somebody's there to make sure you do, a train is a little bit different than that. You pay your ticket before you pay your fare before you get on the train. There are vending machines at each of the stations that allow you to pay either with cash or if you have a fare card, you just swipe it and go, and that's becoming an increasingly common way to pay the fare. Over half of our customers now are using automatic fare payments, either adding money to what we call a go-to card, just a stored value card, or maybe they have, if you're a university student, a pass that's good for rides the entire semester, or an employee who rides to work every day, you'll have a Metro Pass, which is, again, just a monthly payment system. So you tag your card, you get on the train. Hopefully you know which way you're going.
Yeah, that's key.
East or west. You can only go two ways. And then that's that. It's fairly simple. It's fairly straightforward. You know, we've got officers who will be out there to check the fares to make sure that you've paid. And
that's a random type.
Right, yeah. You never do know if you're going to see an officer. It's in the same way that a city runs a parking meter system.
Okay.
You know, you can probably take a chance and get away with it maybe once in a while, but when you do get caught, you're going to get penalized for doing that. You get a $180 fine. It's a misdemeanor.
$180. You
Yeah.
can take a lot of rides for that.
You could. So that, definitely pay your fare. You definitely don't want to get caught without a fare. We know that, though, when we opened the line, there was several weeks of leading up to that where we had officers out enforcing or just doing education and outreach along with other staff members, and that continued after the opening. So we did do a lot of that fare inspection, fare education work in the first couple of weeks. So people really understood kind of how that worked, because it is different than what you would have experienced had you been a bus rider or never taken transit before.
So it really is simple. And you swipe the prepaid cards before you get on the train at the machine. So
That's correct. And officers have handheld devices that they can use to
see that.
check that. Yeah.
Because somehow the card knows. Okay, smart cards.
Or you can also just pay for one ride, and that's either cash or credit or debit card. So you just put your money into the machine. You press a button saying you just want one ticket or whatever, and then gives you a little ticket, and the ticket is good for 2.5 hours riding any Metro Transit vehicle. It could be light rail, it could be a bus, so you can transfer in any direction. So it's
That's really good. So if
makes
you
it
had
really
a
easy.
quick trip, where you just wanted maybe to just go to a drugstore and you were only going about maybe 12, 15 blocks, you really could almost make that and get back all on the same fare.
I think
with
so.
a 2.5
Right.
hour,
Mhm.
which is really good. Yeah.
The other thing is, for people in downtown St. Paul or people who are just visiting downtown St. Paul, you want to take a ride maybe between the Capitol and Lower Town. You want to ride between these stations that are in what we call the downtown zone. We have a reduced fare, 50 cents. So you're not going to pay your full fare when you're riding just in these stations. And that's the same thing that we have in downtown Minneapolis as well.
And let's talk about that brand new end of the line, the Union Depot. That's been totally redone. That's one thing I've got to see, because I used to take a train to Chicago back in around 1970, and I come back and forth through it. But it's something to see, huh? Talk about it. If you've been there. I think you've been there.
Of course. It's it's a project of the Ramsey County Regional Rail Authority. They were the project lead and funder, primarily with federal funding as well, and completely restored this beautiful historic train depot, and it's very authentic. They had oversight from the federal historic preservation people to make sure it was done appropriately, and yeah, it's just gorgeous, and it has space in there for retail uses, and there's a restaurant, and there are other space available for future businesses in there as well. I know a number of events are held there, and weddings, for example.
Weddings
and
now.
right, so yeah, it's just a beautiful space. If people haven't been down there, they should make an effort to go there and take a look. And really, it's set up to be a multimodal transit hub. So Amtrak is now leaving out of there. The light rail station is right in front of Union Depot, so it's an easy transfer there. And there will be other future transit lines that are being planned to connect at Union Depot. And then there are a number of Metro Transit buses that go in and out of there daily right now. So,
Well, that's wonderful, because it was a grand building. I mean, even it was in its decline in the 70s, but early 70s. But it sure was a grand building. Kind of sad, like an older lady, no longer able to take care of herself so much. Clothes kind of not so new. So I'm glad that that's happened. Okay, now there was an effort to do things green, both in the building and in the continuing, both in the metals used, like copper was 45% recycled. I think Trax metal was recycled about 50%. I mean, it was incredible that they were using all this scrap metal to make tracks and rebar and all that. But the storm water was an issue. And that's been done too with trenching or something, infiltration trenching.
Sure, there was a innovative new design for the stormwater management. This is managing the stormwater that falls on the street and the LRT right-of-way, and it was designed to feed the tree trench so that there wasn't the need for additional irrigation to make sure the trees survived. Whenever you put in street trees in an urban area, that's typically been an issue. How do the trees actually grow and survive in that environment? Do they get enough water? And so this way, the stormwater feeds the trees, and hopefully they will then grow and beyond the typical 5 years for an urban tree in a city streetscape. And that was an innovative, I mean, it seems logical when you think about it, but it was a very innovative approach to stormwater management.
And we had a very rainy month in June. I don't know, you maybe or maybe not know this, but did the trenches work, as far as you know?
I haven't heard of anything other than that.
So they must be working.
And I should say, too, maybe people are wondering, well, what's the big deal with stormwater management? That's been an increasing trend, I think, in development, that there's a lot more focus on managing stormwater on site rather than just putting it into a storm sewer and sending it to the river. We want to be recharging our groundwater rather than depleting it constantly, and it's just a much more sustainable way to handle development and handle water management. And so that is a much bigger focus of development than it has been in the past.
Yeah, I mean, it's a filtration system for pesticides, herbicides, all of the things, the pollutants that
Right,
are
it
generated
cleans
on
the
our
water.
streets.
Mhm.
I know people need to understand, I know Richfield's now requiring it as a part of any development project. And I was very familiar with it at the University of Minnesota. All their new academic health center buildings were built kind of in a row on the north side of the football stadium. But they all have their ditches, I guess the better word is trenches, but and a lot of use of natural grasses and flowers too.
Right, a big focus is how do you use stormwater to be sort of multi-purpose? So besides treating it and handling it on site, how can it become an amenity for the site and the project, either as a water feature or in feeding some of the landscaping? And yeah, that's a really interesting new area for development and planning.
Yeah. The light rail now is, what, 2 months, a little over, almost 3 months old.
Mm-hmm.
How's the day-to-day operation going? I mean,
So as we talked about, the ridership obviously is a sign that we're doing something right and that people are responding to that. So we're really pleased with that. But overall, the system is operating largely the way that we intended it to do so. So we've had, at the very early stages, we had a lot of effort around safety and security, making sure that motorists and pedestrians and bicyclists and all those who interact in that corridor understood how the line was going to operate, and that they were aware that this was going to be different than what they were used to. And so we've had a couple of minor incidents where vehicles have come into contact with train cars. Fortunately, in all those cases, we've escaped without any really serious injuries. And it's been a while since we've had an issue, so we think people are starting to get the message. It doesn't make it any less important to remind people that this is something that they need to be aware of and be mindful of and be obeying the traffic signals. So that's an issue. But largely the transition from bus to rail has been, I can't say seamless, but it's been nearly seamless. So we've seen all the folks that were riding the buses, and they're still on University Avenue, because we want to provide some local service, but we eliminated one of the routes that really sort of mimicked what we're doing now with light rail, a limited stop service.
the 16?
The 16 remains, and that's
Oh,
the
that
one.
remains.
That's the line that'll provide local service. So our stations are spaced so far apart that some
yeah.
people don't necessarily maybe have the mobility to get to all the locations on the corridors. We continue that service to provide those folks a way to continue to travel the corridor. But what we had was called Route 50, which was replaced. And then we have another parallel service, which is really the end-to-end service. It goes from downtown St. Paul to downtown Minneapolis for those people who don't need to stop between the downtowns, and that continues as well. And
Like kind of an express bus?
yeah,
type
an
of
express bus. Yeah, and so there have been some questions now about does the Green Line really efficiently move between downtown Minneapolis and downtown St. Paul, and part of the answer to that question is it was never really intended to do so. We added stops, and we deliberately built the line in a way that it would serve the neighborhoods that it's in. So for people who are going from downtown to downtown, keep doing that, keep riding the 94, but the Green Line is a different service for a different market.
Really is to get people who want to stop at various places along University to.
Oh, sure. The state capitol, the Midway
Capitol.
shopping area, the University of Minnesota.
Yeah.
Lots of major destinations along the way.
I'll say one of the things that we've been excited to see is that there's just been a lot of, whether it's organized tours or people just out riding to explore parts of the city that they haven't been to in a long time. If you're from Minneapolis and you thought about going to St. Paul, but you never went, you're starting to see some people do that, and vice versa.
It's almost become a tourist thing.
It is. I go to spin classes at the YMCA, and an instructor the other night was telling us about how they rode their bike to St. Paul, got on the train, stopped about halfway, had dinner, and then came all the way back. And so that's the kind of thing that we're seeing is people utilizing the train not just for utilitarian purposes, but for pleasure as well.
Yeah, pleasure. And since you said bikes, there is a place for the bikes to go on to the trains?
Yep, that's one of the beautiful things about light rail is for bicyclists or for people in mobility devices, it's a level platform or level boarding, so you really you roll right on and you got nothing, you have really no issues.
Just a curiosity, where does, there is a live person manipulating the train. Where are they seated?
Sure, very much so. So each car is equipped with a cab, and so the trains run in 3-car consists is what we call them, but it's 3 trains for the most part running together with one operator. So
One per each one as it goes by.
one per each 3-car set. So we've got 3 cars, each attached to one another, and one operator in that whole system. That's kind of the beauty of light rail versus a bus, where a bus, you have to have an operator for every vehicle.
bus.
Basically here we've tripled, if not more, the number of people that can be carried with a single operator.
Single operator. So it's much more efficient, lower personnel costs. And then when they get to the end of the line, do they do a loop, or is there a way to go to the one that used to be in the back and now that becomes the front?
Yeah, there's a couple ways to do that, but if an operator is being relieved, if they're done for their work at the end of the day, then somebody will be at either at Target Field Station in Minneapolis or Union Depot in St. Paul, and they'll be able to just take care of them, fill in that way. But if a train operator is going to continue, then yeah, it is just a matter of getting out and walking to the front and doing it all over again.
That's fascinating to me anyway. Okay, what else? The bus lines have been changed a little bit, so they more interact better with the Green Line. Is that true?
Right, so on the same day that the Green Line opened on June 14th, we realigned most of the bus service that connects to Green Line stations. And realigned is maybe not a great word to use, but we optimized the system in a way that allowed people to take advantage of the new investment. So we know that because there aren't any park and rides along the Green Line, it's not really, in the same way that the Blue Line is. It's through an urban corridor, not a lot of parking along there. People are going to have to walk there. They're going to have to take a bus there. They're going to have to bike there. They're going to have to find a way to get into the line that's perhaps not in their vehicle. And so the connecting bus service is really critical. So we realigned a lot of the services to make sure that they connected with these stations. We improved the frequency of service in a lot of cases. We expanded the hours of service in a lot of cases. We added a couple of new routes. Lexington Parkway is a good example where there has not been bus service for a long time. There's now a bus service that'll bring you all the way from the very south side of St. Paul and all the way up to Como Zoo. And along the way, if you want to stop at Lexington Parkway Station and catch a train, you can do that too. So these are the kinds of things that we've done, and we've heard a lot of really positive things about.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it was an exciting day. I mean, the St. Paul people must have been happy, and I'm sure those businesses were so happy to have everything over and it off and running. Have they seen any increase? It might be too soon to tell. I mean, 3 months is really not long enough to tell, but do the businesses that were impacted, do they feel good about the light rail now?
Oh, I think so. I mean, it's a mixed bag, of course. I think some businesses haven't seen a huge bump, and others have seen an increase. There was part of working with the businesses in the community throughout this process. There was a marketing campaign or marketing effort that was developed to really market the different stations and then market the individual businesses at those stations, and primarily focused on the smaller businesses, really to make people who weren't familiar with university realize what's there and hopefully take the train and experience some of that. And I think some of those businesses have definitely seen an uptick because of that marketing campaign. There were, I think, 40,000 visitor guides that were created that had very detailed information about businesses that were on the line, and that there were businesses that were featured on bus sides and on billboards. And so I think all of that, and this was all before the line opened, so it really, it was to help drive business to these businesses during construction when they really needed to have a little bit more visibility, and also, of course, afterwards too.
You brought up the tests for the university will be the Monday, the day after Labor Day, when the university opens. I worked at the U for 41 years in buildings right along Washington Avenue there, and knowing those students at the U where they think they can cut across and jaywalk any time, and what they got to learn is that now the Washington Mall, or Washington Avenue on the East Bank has really almost become like a mall. The only vehicles that go down there are buses, emergency vehicles, and the train, and bikes and walkers. Are you doing anything special to make sure all these people understand how to ride light rail?
Sure. So we had the outreach, ahead of the Green Line's opening, but we also are having now, as campus is kind of picking up again, a renewed focus on that. So we'll have our staff will be out, the University of Minnesota staff will be out in a joint effort over the next couple of weeks here, and especially in the first week of class, to make sure that students understand that this is a new environment, that they need to be paying attention, that they maybe want to take out the earbuds momentarily as they go through this particular area. But so far, we've had nothing but really a lot of success there, and it's a fairly unique setup. We've got buses going on the same right-of-way as trains, which is pretty unusual for a lot of our operators, unusual for people to witness, and unusual for the industry, but it's working out very well.
Yeah, I mean, are they actually driving, right? Oh, I didn't know that. I mean,
for about 3 blocks there. For about 3 blocks after you cross.
It's not very long. Because I was crossing during all the construction, going back and forth from the parking ramp, and that was interesting. How the different walkways that they, one day you crossed here and the next day you were crossing over there, but it was all very good. And I have to say, everybody was very good. I mean, if you accidentally got in the wrong place, they stopped the machine. I don't think we lost anybody during construction, but it was good. But yeah, that would be a whole new way for university people to think about, and for 3 months now to think about Washington
Sure,
Avenue.
and you know, just to give you an idea, we've started to see kind of where the busiest stations are at, and obviously downtown Minneapolis and Nicollet Mall Station is a very busy one with a lot of workers coming to and from, but East Bank Station is right there at the top of the list as well.
That's very busy. Yeah, and so for people that aren't aware of it, they need to know that you cannot get from the Minnesota River to, further on University, going down Washington like you always did. It's totally closed off. So, that's good. Okay, well, I think we've covered everything about the Green Line. Anything anybody wants to add that maybe I've missed or we've missed so far?
Oh, you had asked earlier before we started maybe about the vertical connection that's
Oh,
in,
that's right. I
in
wanted to
downtown
talk
St.
about
Paul.
that vertical connection. Yeah, to explain the vertical connection in St. Paul.
So the train takes kind of a 90-degree left turn in downtown St. Paul. It goes through the middle of a block at a diagonal. And so there's a skyway system in downtown St. Paul, and that created a great opportunity to allow people to go directly from the station platform up into the skyway system. That wasn't originally part of the design, but I think there was a lot of interest from downtown residents and disability advocates to have that kind of a connection so that you could take an elevator right from the skyway down to the station platform. So that has really, I think, added to the usability of the system, and it has some public art on it, so it looks pretty cool at night, and yeah, it's a great addition.
I find that fascinating, that would be a way you go directly from the light rail into the skyway system. Is Minneapolis going to do anything like that? Because that's a marvelous feature.
Well, what she's talking about really is incorporating the station into the urban network, and that's what we are seeing a little bit of in downtown Minneapolis. At the Nicollet Mall Station, we've got really the city's first high-rise in many years. We're expanding the platform at Nicollet Mall Station to accommodate that development, so it's really being built into it. And now, obviously, with the new stadium being built at downtown East, we're talking as well about how do we incorporate the station into that project. So in all these cases, it's really about making transit really a part of everything else that's going on around it.
I had forgotten about the new Viking Stadium. I
Yeah, that's
assume
happening.
is there a LRT stop close to that?
Yep, that's called our Downtown East station. It used to be called Downtown East / Metrodome Station, although without a Metrodome.
It's obviously not the Metro anymore, but that's, so people can ride almost directly right to the stadium then.
Yeah, they can get right there, and even though the Vikings have now moved over to TCF Bank Stadium, we're seeing that people are still using light rail, and even more so than they have in past seasons. We've had 2 preseasons games to date. We've got an average of 10,000 or so customers who are riding to the game on these game days, and these first 2, and probably we'll see more of that. And that's perhaps a little bit unique because the University of Minnesota is very compact, and there's not a lot of ways to get to the game or in and out easily, but the train has definitely been a popular option for folks. So the 10,000 plus rides that we're seeing represents about 20% of the people that are going to the games, twice what we were doing at the previous site.
Yeah, I mean, when you really think about it, I mean, there's the Gopher football, until the new stadium there'll be Vikings football, and you have all the Gopher hockey and the Gopher basketball. All of that is right close there, and people can easily access the light rail and not bother to pay for parking, which is very expensive. I can attest to that. So that's very, very good. So, anything else that we've missed?
Well, I would say, she picked up on the public art at Central Station, and that's not really the only station that has public art. All of the stations have some elements of public art, and there are tours that you can take and features that you can take at each of the station. You can, if you are so interested in kind of hearing the backstory, you can listen to the artists speak about the art that they've created for that particular station. That's either available through our website or through a program that you use on your mobile device. So that's kind of an interesting thing too, because all the stations reflect the communities that they're in. All of the art that was incorporated in the stations was created through a process that involved community members and really reflects some of what they really wanted. Dale Street's a really good example where you've got the Faces of Rondo, so a community that had a lot of heartache after 94 was built, really being brought together again by the Green Line and having the station itself actually be a testament to that.
That is really great. I didn't realize that. So, well, wonderful. I've learned so much. I got to get on that train and investigate St. Paul. I mean, I think you do get a little bit provincial unless you're working and living on opposite sides of the river. You tend to stay on your own side, and I really see that this light rail is going to really help bring those two communities closer together. Was there talk about that as this whole thing was being designed and constructed, that there was an opportunity to bring the two cities together?
Oh, definitely. I think we're seeing more people just deciding to explore St. Paul and check out all the great ethnic restaurants along University and check out Lower Town and sort of the burgeoning music and art scene there, and yeah, and vice versa. Folks from St. Paul being able to get to Minneapolis and downtown Minneapolis easier. So it's a great improvement for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you don't really think about it. I mean, your primary is to provide transit for people that either want it, don't have a car, can't afford a car. But then there's all these side things that happen. That's really like the Union Depot, the art, public art along the way, and then a chance to get to know the city better. Well, I think we've covered the Green Line. I hope our audience knows a little bit more than what they did before. And it's just been so wonderful for you guys to be here. And I really appreciate, because especially maybe our audience didn't hear what happened before we went online. We discovered that Drew's getting married. So I know you're taking time out of a busy schedule right now. You're getting
two
married
jobs.
in a couple days. So thanks again. And Donna, I'm sure there's more and more projects always up your sleeve, right?
Development's always happening. The city's always changing. That's right.
Okay, with that, I'll say goodnight, and thanks to our two guests, Donna Drummond, Director of Planning for the City of St. Paul, and Drew Kerr, PR Specialist for Metro Transit. Thanks so much, and good night.